very lucky today to have Ian Lloyd present for us. So Ian's head of Microgrid Solutions at Siemens, and he's going to talk to us about the SEND microgrid at Keele. In the distant past, Ian was also worked as innovation project manager at Northern Power Grid, and he's worked closely with us at the university then and now on a variety of different activities. So we're always happy to hear from and see Ian. So Ian, if you'd like to share your screen and get going, and then afterwards we'll have some questions, so you can either ask your questions in the chat, or you can raise your hand on Zoom and I'll call you out that way.
Yeah, okay. Good morning. Thanks, David. Good morning, everybody. I trust that you can hear me. So if somebody can give me just a little thumbs up, just to confirm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, that's fantastic. So I'm just sharing my screen here in terms of a microgrid overview for Keele University and the SEND project that we've been closely aligned with. I work for an organisation called Siemens, like David mentioned. There's Siemens is a large organisation, of course. It covers the entire globe in terms of technology and services and consultancy supply, and the arrangements of that to a broad range of customers that cover nearly every touch point that we have in terms of technology and in terms of the environments in which we live in terms of infrastructure and the support of that moving forward. There's over close to 400,000 people that actually work for the organisation. We're in 190 different countries, and I'm proud to be part of a smart infrastructure division within Siemens itself, and I work out of the UK, of course, in the digital grid business unit. Part of the transition that we've been on over the last few years, Siemens continues to reinvent itself. It's been part in the UK for over 170 years. A very well-known brand, very trust-centric in terms of the solutions and the provisions that we put out in the marketplace. We've been coordinating telecommunications, electricity transmission and distribution within and offering control platforms that are coordinating those over many years now. And of course, that has enabled us to have a position in terms of being able to influence, coordinate, control many areas of national infrastructure. The Smart Infrastructure Division is a progression on that in terms of how Siemens continues to reinvent itself. It looks for shifts in the marketplace. It continues to look for shifts in the climate. It continues to look for shifts in energy transitions. And then, of course, as well, in changes in culture and communities that are connected there. So smart infrastructure is actually a bringing together of traditional transmission, distribution, control systems in terms of electricity and energy management, and how we can then start to link that in terms of buildings and how those buildings are starting to play a more significant part in terms of what we do on a modern day environment. This particular graphic is here. It's just an opening screen. This is our new strapline where for smart infrastructure, it's all about creating environments that care, and that covers those particular topics I've just talked about, from large conurbations to rural communities, from individuals to clusters of people and clusters of buildings, and how they can all be utilized together. And this is in terms of sort of what we've been engineering in terms of the work that we've done in terms of working on the campus at Keele University. And this is the part of the division that I head up within the UK. It's microgrids and microgrid solutions as a whole. For Keele University, this is an infographic in terms of being able to describe what's happening at on the facility in a very simplistic way. It's a complicated project that goes without saying. We've been involved very heavily in the left-hand side of the diagram, which is the SEND project, the Smart Energy Network Demonstrator project. This is phase 1, which is coordinating a whole raft of buildings, digitalizing the existing energy supply arrangement that happens on site in terms of electricity, heat, gas, and transport. linking that to commercial controllers in terms of being able to manage buildings en masse, being able to gather information from individual homes and multiple hundreds or even thousands of meters across the entire facility, and then being able to link in the transport element as well. Keele University is relatively unique. It is probably one of the largest bounded sites within Europe and maybe even globally. Many other campuses, just like Newcastle University, you'll have your main area of a campus focus, maybe a quadrangle that forms like the historical element of what happens within the building. But then the rest of the university facility is somewhat spread around the traditional county, and that might be encompassing, I mean, within the city. It might stretch out, I mean, into the countryside, and where you have different satellite communities and areas of research and demonstration that are able to all be brought together in terms of a university environment. At Keele University, that all exists on the one particular site, and there's over 12,000 students that play a part in that particular cohort that's there. Many of them, most of them, in fact, actually reside on the site. They entertain themselves on site, and there's the whole raft of eating establishments, leisure facilities that exist there to support that entire community. On the right-hand side of the graph, of the infographic that's here, you see the LCG project. This is low carbon energy generation project. This is another phase of development that Keele University have invested in, and it currently comprises, in terms of more than 8 megawatts of a collection of wind, solar PV and battery energy storage that's there on site. But there's a provision for others. Other renewable loads that could be either an extension of those ones that I've just mentioned, or it could be other new novel technologies or conventional ones like CHP plants or even flywheel technology that can exist on there. And the benefit, the purpose and the objective of those, of course, is to be able to allow the university to completely decarbonize its operation, to reduce its carbon consumption by greater than 4,000 tons of carbon per year by 2021. I'm glad to say that we've just about achieved that. There's what goes along with that, of course, is renewable energy. I mean, a superabundant source that's coming from the sun, the wind, is that there's a natural reduction in the energy cost for the entire university campus to be able to look at managing all these renewable assets, managing them all and orchestrating them all across the existing site, and how they're all being coordinated together. And of course, this is the role of the microgrid design that we've put in place there to allow all these assets to be able to be controlled and to be integrated with the existing facilities to allow this decarbonisation goal to be achieved. One of the benefits that comes from it, of course, is that there's a vast amount of data that's being captured on this particular campus, and that data is all being provided in an open data source that allows clear access for the entire research community and the small medium enterprises of businesses that have all been attached to this particular project to have transparency in the data that's available on the particular site, and allow the university and its collaborative partners to be able to continue with their own research and to continue with their own business development. And this is really important. I think there's over 28 different PhD studies that are being coordinated currently off this particular project, which is really encouraging. Many within Keele University itself, and many linked across many other universities, including Newcastle. This is another infographic, of course, but it tries to tell the tale around about how we gather data and how we manage it in terms of the microgrid solutions environment that we've created over in Keele University. So in the very lower half of the graphic here, you have the individual buildings that make up the environment that's there, and they could be the learning academic facilities, they could be individual residences, they could be, I mean, the library, for instance. And then you have all these distributed assets that exist across the entire facility there in terms of conventional energy consumption devices that have a meter attached to it, and others that are actually producing energy when they sit within the grid. And there's no limit really in terms of what can be coordinated across the site. If it has a meter, then we can gather the data, we can understand where the data is coming from, we can define exactly what sort of flexibility is available from each of these coordinated assets. Then we can have some influence in terms of how they operate and how we can coordinate them all to be orchestrated together. Security is a real key important piece here. Data security, of course, is that, but also the command and control environment needs to be secure, needs to be cyber secure, needs to be very robust in terms of how the system is managed and how it's coordinated. This is part and parcel with everything that Siemens do. It's right at the heart in terms of traditional electricity transmission control. But of course, we're looking at a whole energy vector environment that's here, that's looking at heat, gas, electricity, and transport too. So being able to modulate all of these things together is important, to be able to gather all this information, to be able to stream it, to be either to manage it locally, or to be able to stream it up into a cloud space environment where we can define new applications and new algorithms to be able to drive things in near real time, and then be able to balance across energy vectors, to be able to optimize across the entire site, either for cost or for carbon consumption. So a real interesting environment here in terms of the way that traditional control systems have transitioned from in the past, which would have been a site-based, server-based control algorithm that would have had a rule-based structure that sits in it, to now being a data-enabled, data-driven, algorithm-centric platform that can drive coordinated control across the entire platform. There's some critical lessons that have been learned across the site. I'll not spend too much time in going through these, but safe to say that there's a relationship building focus that's there, and a program and technical solutions focus that needs to be there. It was critically important to have that clear objective vision about what was required in terms of being able to understand who the stakeholders were likely to be, what the objectives of the university were likely to be, and having a process in place to be able to disseminate and be able to identify and broadcast progress across the campus environment as it changed over the last 3 years. And of course, in terms of the program and the technical solutions that's there, it's really important to recognize that this is the energy sector, and it continues to change. The marketplace continues to change, technology continues to change, technology flexibility and communications and control continues to change. And there's different touch points that are there in terms of the drivers for change that mean that at some points in time, electric vehicle charging might be a priority. Another period of time, then the energy marketplace might be a priority. So it's really important to have an agile, dynamic approach to be able to deal with these priorities as the marketplace and technology changes, to be able to go through. It's also really important for a particular project like this is to be able to gain some momentum on a project of such scale. So identifying what can be implemented quickly with least or no regrets, right, is really important to be able to get a project off the ground, to be able to get some involvement and some engagement and some ownership and responsibility to be accepted from either, the supplier, like what we do in Siemens, or from the university as a whole. Is really important to be able to generate that momentum that sits behind the project. Once you have a little bit of momentum, and of course, then you can start to be able to drive forward, and you can start to drive changes, drive challenges to be able to either provide, the solution that you set out to deliver, or the solution as now been defined in this agile approach that you need to be able to deliver it. Important for academic research, of course, was being able to define what the initiatives and what the objectives were across the entire university that were there. You see this, it's been broken down into a list of tiles that's here, that's been broken down into 7 different objective elements. And these initiatives, so initiative A through to G that you see on here, starts to deal off with with basic data capture, being able to understand where information is available, how it's being managed, what sort of management systems need to be put in place, all the way through to probably the most advanced demonstration of self-healing networks that's been completed on the site over there. These are just the tiles, of course. What sits underneath each of these elements is a very clear definition of the what and the how they will be achieved. And both of those are linked very closely in terms of the use cases that university want to be able to demonstrate, how industry links to those use cases, and what the benefits are likely to be in terms of being able to progress the outputs of each of these initiatives to either define how that will be used in business as usual for the university establishment, or how even they can be commercialized and then be rolled out in terms of a progression piece that can be replicated time and time again. The beauty of Keele University, of course, in this bounded environment is it has all the ingredients of that of a small town. It's very important then to be able to recognize is that this isn't a whole Siemens solution. It needs to have an agnostic and open protocol approach to be able to link with old and new assets that are there. Of course, the university has been there for an awful long period of time. Some of the meters that are there were manual clockwork meters. They had to be digitalized to be able to gather information and data from them. Understanding about how energy was being consumed in some of the buildings without building management systems had to be considered, and the like. So there's many different things that play a part in here in terms of how you transition from a campus to an intelligent campus. And how you can start to be able to modulate energy and energy consumption across the entire estate for it to be coordinated, covering all these different initiative topics. This is a view of the control environment that we've created there. There's two particular ones. There's one that is a traditional SCADA network. That's a single line diagram. Power management control system that's there that deals with real-time faults and electrical occurrences on the network. That is particularly important in terms of having that complete overview and that security in terms of supply and supply resilience across the entire estate. But this is a view of that data platform that I described earlier in terms of the individual control systems, the individual assets that across the university estate are all being streamed into this environment. And we're able to create this digitalized view, this digital twin, essentially, of the campus, where you can see in a very clear aesthetic form what the university arrangement is, how we've managed to break it down into terms of different microgrids that operate within the university environment. And our reason for doing that, of course, is that we can manage one portion of the network in isolation to another one, so we can define how energy is traded between the microgrids, whether it's based on cost, whether it's based on carbon, whether it's the same initiative for the entire university estate in terms of maximum carbon reduction regardless of cost, or whether it's maximum carbon reduction in relation to maintaining the existing cost level about how it operates just now. So the main portion of this particular screenshot is here, defining that university campus as a whole. And on the right, you've got the individual panes here in terms of when you click on some of these microgrid assets, how it brings up the individual buildings that are playing a role in terms of coordinated control within each of these particular grid environments, and individual buildings, and then even the renewable assets that sit down the bottom. It's very clear, it's very user-friendly, it's a nice user interface. It takes a little bit of training, of course, to get used to it. But in terms of being a very well designed and well received platform, it's safe to say it's probably been one of the most one of the better examples about what we've been able to achieve to date on this particular in this particular view. This, of course, in terms of replication of this, in terms of the scale of a small town, how it can be replicated as a city, as a county, or even as a country, then each of these different pockets could be different cities, they could be different towns, they could be a different university campus, just like Newcastle and others. In terms of an individual building, of course, so if I click on the building view, this is a library view that I just I took a screenshot of just yesterday. We have a view of the library. We're able to replay the amount of energy that's being consumed within the library and how it's been coordinated to reduce its energy consumption on an ongoing basis. We have a view here where we've created a bit of an environmental impact bubble that sits above the building. So we know, well, it's green there at the minute with a bit of an amber hue that sits in it. It can go all the way to red if it was being particularly hungry in terms of energy consumption, both in electricity and gas, as this building uses energy from both those particular sources. That's there. On the right hand side here, you can see some of these graphs that are there. The middle one is in terms of consumption forecast. This was a live view that I captured about 3 o'clock in the afternoon. So you can see the actuals are in red, the forecast is in orange. So you can see now in terms of how our artificial intelligence and our neural networks are working to be able to get a very clear forecast in terms of energy that's likely to be consumed from this one particular facility. We link that then to how we manage energy that's being consumed within the building, and in terms of what the carbon concentration of the energy that's being supplied to the building is, and we manage to be able to reduce load based on that carbon intensity. This is a particularly important view. 3 o'clock yesterday. This is the cumulative total of 175 kilograms of carbon that was saved on a daily basis. This is from midnight to 3 p.m. Just yesterday, it probably would have topped over maybe 200, maybe even 250 kilograms of carbon saved in one building, in one day, on one university establishment. To scale this up across a country level, of course, there's probably 100,000 building management systems fitted across the UK. Some of them Siemens, some of them by others, of course. So the benefit of being able to coordinate multiple buildings in this format means a massive reduction in energy, massive reduction in energy cost, and also a massive reduction in carbon being consumed across the entire nation, if there's a potential to be able to roll that out. We didn't stop here in terms of this control platform. We wanted to be able to create a little bit of a wow moment that's on the university facility. We created an augmented reality platform that was there that people can actually immerse themselves in the university environment. This is housed on an iPad. This is just a screenshot of it. I'll show you a short video just briefly. What it's possible to do, of course, you're able to sit in this central sculptural arrangement that the university have. You can walk up and down the pathways. You can look up and down at the buildings. This is from a bird's eye level. And as you scroll into the buildings, then each of these different views become very dynamic. On the right-hand side there, of course, you see some panes that are there. So permit me, please, just to be able to play you this short video. It's only 40 seconds or so long, but this gives you a bit of a view about how this particular platform works and what sort of value it has to the university. Good. Hope you enjoyed that. This is making it real, of course, in the university environment itself. This is the control room. We've made it a secure control room. You need to have an access key to be able to enter this space. Well, unless you go through the glass windows with the sledgehammer, I suppose. But there's a but you need to have authority to get into this particular room. You have to have training, of course, to be able to understand what's happening in the control environment. We've created a video wall in terms of how the university then can use this particular space to be able to monitor all the energy assets that are on their network. Safe to say that we've also enabled some web logins from here. So the university had it's a traditional way of managing their resources across the site. If they had a fault, then they'd be alerted to the faults. The people would have to be mobilized. They'd have to go out. They'd have to try to find individual faults on the network. This digitalized platform enables people, of course, to be able to really understand about what's happening on the network in near real time, and to be able to understand where faults have been generated, to be able to gather and engage alarms and any sort of system events, feedbacks that have been coming back from this particular environment, and then be able to target them accurately and quickly, of course, which makes a big difference. Also, in this particular environment, they're able to switch some of the network that's been automated in terms of their teleactuation that's there as well. So that makes it an awful lot safer, of course, in terms of being able to operate high voltage and low voltage switches from this environment without putting people at risk. That's there as well. So a very important space. Clearly, security is a key aspect of it, and it's been made a very nice space in terms of a working environment where people can enjoy to work, and they can even stream things like the cricket and the World Cup on some of these large video walls as well. So that makes it a very valuable space. So I understand that it's not what its intended purpose was, of course. In terms of this is a texty screen. These slides will be available to you all, of course. It gives a little bit of a breakdown around about Siemens on the left-hand side in terms of why Keele was really important in terms of strategic development, in terms of this scale of a small town and being able to replicate it time and time again. And on the right-hand side, you see some of these key reference sites that have been achieved globally from some of my colleagues around the world. They cover, there's a few there in Australia, some in Germany, there's one in the UK, a whole number now that exist in the United States. Please feel free to look on the Microgrids link that David will share you afterwards in terms of being able to look at some of the reference cases that have been achieved globally. But each of these ones have been particularly selected there in terms of a different view around about reducing operational cost, improving fuel consumption, improving resilience in terms of outage times, understanding campuses, and modes of operation, of course. And then you've had the detailed reveal just today of the Keele University network in terms of what its ambitions are in terms of reducing their carbon footprint and reducing their operational cost across the site. And I think, David, that's it for me. That's it in terms of the presentation. So I'm keen to get your views really in terms of any feedback or any questions that you have.